House Rivalries. I'm Nekra and joined by Cinder. Cinder's been here since the very beginning of the night. Took us through a very quick 3-0 series that we just saw, but I think we're going to have a little bit of a longer matchup for you. It's going to be Crescent versus RBG for the second round of Swiss, and I think Cinder is so ready to tell you about what these deck lists are.
Yeah, indeed. So Crescent bringing to the battle Control Priest, Mid-Range Hunter, Pirate Rogue, and Cube Warlock. RBG had a very similar lineup, also Control Priest, Mid-Range Hunter, and Pirate Rogue, but they went with the even Paladin. So the difference being the Warlock and the Paladin between the two lineups. So several mirror matches possible, though RBG decided to ban the Control Priest from Crescent, taking that off the board, and the even Paladin, which had a really strong line against Crescent, is banned. So that leaves us with two mirrors, again, Mid-Range Hunter and Pirate Rogue, and then the Control Priest and the Cube Warlock are the outliers.
So do these bans make sense to you in the format that we're playing in today?
I think so. I think Crescent's Control Priest was probably their strongest deck and their only reliable counter to the even Paladin. So they kind of were forced to RBG was forced to ban the Control Priest, I think. And I think Crescent probably read correctly that their priest was going to get bans, and so that left them with no answers for the even Paladin. So the even Paladin got struck from their side of the table. So I think these bans would make perfect sense, honestly.
All right. Well, sounds like these players are ready to get into it, and we are so excited. Looking at maybe the potential matchups that we might see, what do you expect that these players are going to start out with tonight?
I wouldn't be surprised if Crescent tried to get all the mirror matches out of the way first, try to get the Hunter and the Rogue queued up. That kind of gives them the best odds to get a couple of wins in the bag before they have to queue up that Cube Warlock, because the Warlock is up against a bunch of stuff that just dumps damage on the face. That is not what Warlock wants to see.
That makes a lot of sense. There are some cases where Warlocks can kind of out-heal that damage if they're able to get that Death Knight online, but it seems to me that in that matchup, you might not get that chance.
Right. The mid-range Hunter is so fast. And they can snowball out of control very, very quickly. And the Pirate Rogue, this new tempo Rogue, is also extremely fast. It's got quite a lot of charge minions, quite a lot of bursts. They're running Eviscerate now instead of Keleseth for a much faster burst. So they can unload a lot of damage very, very quickly. And of course, Control Priest is Control Priest. You're just going to get mind blasted, after turn 9 or 10. So you got to make sure you got enough life to survive a couple of turns of mind blast combos.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be a battle and a race to whoever is able to get that damage out, and whether or not we can see those Death Knights come online, which just seems to be the name of the game for most of the meta here that we've been doing in Hearthstone. But I think we're ready to get into it. So we're going to see the first look at what these players for RBG and Crescent have decided to battle it out with, and it looks like that RBG is going to start out with that Miracle Rogue, and Crescent is going to start out with that Mid-Range Hunter.
Yeah, this is about what I would expect. I think both teams are going to want to try and determine the way the mirror matches go early on, and in the Rogue versus Hunter, this is a tough call because the Rogue is fairly new on the scene, so the data may not be settled yet. But both of these decks can just output so much damage. So whoever gets on board first is probably going to have a pretty good chance of snowballing into a mid game lead.
I think you're right about that, and I think that from the look of things, it does look like Crescent's going to have that earlier start to the board. You've got that Dire Maul. You do have the Crackling Razor Maw in hand to be able to adapt that tiny little beast. But that 3 health on there is really difficult for a rogue to deal with. You do see the Deadly Poison in hand, so that's going to help take that one out of the fight. But if you are able to get the adaptation of the extra health, we might be looking at a pretty big mole.
Yeah, the Crackling Razor Maw is the exact minion you want to see right after that Dire Maul, because as you noted, like, minus something like Backstab, it's tough for the Rogue to really get ahead of those 3 health minions, and they rolled +3 attack, which is exactly I think what Crescent wanted to see there.
I think you're right about that one because this is going to be extra damage that we're going to have to see RBG take to the face here if they are going to remove that Dire Mole. But removing that threat might pay off in spades if that Edwin Van Cleef is able to stick to the board. You really only have that 3 damage, but you see Crescent's got that coin flank strike there.
Yeah, it's a clean as answer as I think they're gonna get, and I don't blame RBG for running out the 6/6 here. It's normally this would be very difficult for the hunter to deal with. They pretty much have to exactly have coin flanking strike. So I think betting on that was fine, but we can see that Crescent has it, so they're gonna get a clean answer and get a 3/3 after the trade if they want to go with that route.
This looks like a pretty good position for Crescent to be in at the moment, and I think it is because they were able to get such a strong start. It really forced RBG to utilize resources that they would have otherwise have enjoyed saving for later turns in the game. Because look at how many cards RBG has in their hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the rogue this rogue deck really only runs as a playable one drop, the Firefly, which they just drew.
Uh-huh.
So if they don't get the first drop and the hunter does, like the hunter just keeps trading and maintaining board advantage and trying to keep a card advantage on their opponent, which you can see their hands are about the same, but look at the RBG's already taken 11 damage,
Yeah,
even though they're
7 of
securing the
that
board here.
was just forced damage that they really
Right.
needed to take from clearing out the minions that Crescent had on board. Look at the Huffer too. What is this RNG right now from Crescent?
Always. The last series we saw Huffer rolled almost every single time. I think
Oh
Misha
man.
might have been rolled once, maybe, but it was almost always Huffer. But yeah, like that
What to do?
RBG is basically what they're doing is they're using their health as a resource, right? They
Mhm.
use the deadly poison in combination with the dagger to get an extra trade on the board every turn and try to secure this board away from Crescent. And now Crescent had to use the hover to trade, and now Innovation's taken the lead on board. This Hand Clan Thug is going to go unchallenged.
Yeah, you do have the baited arrow from Crescent, which would only do 3 damage. But now, after we see RBG taking a move to try to get some damage onto Crescent, that is going to buff up that Henchclan Thug out of the range where baited arrow would have been the perfect answer. But Master's Call coming out here, that's going to replenish a lot of resources here for Crescent. And we're seeing some pretty good minions coming out of that draw.
Little awkward though. You usually want to see the hyena paired up with either Spring Paws or Unleash the Hounds,
Right?
and then the High Main is just a little early. And I mean the High Main's a great card, but they can't play it here. They're gonna have to wait till next turn. And High Main is not a great card to play when you're behind on board either, because then your opponent just continues to build and pump in more damage. So not the best draw off the Master's Call, but I think it was probably a fair play. They didn't really have much else to do that turn.
Yeah, it's unfortunate the resources that they do have in hand now. Even drawing the Scavenging Hyena, you don't have any Spring Paws. You don't have the mana for the Spring Paws. You already used the coin to try to deal with the Edwin Van Cleef that you saw on turn 3 coming out from RBG. And now look at the momentum that RBG has in this game. That Henchclan Thug going unanswered is going to prove to be a massive problem for Crescent to deal with.
Right, and I think what Crescent was doing there with the hyena was just trying to put something on board saying you have to answer this or else we're going to build on it. Unfortunately, this rogue has just all kind of ways to deal 2 damage.
Yeah.
And they just went ahead with 4. They just used the Eviscerate to clear it off, and rightfully, understandably so. This leaves RBG with 9 damage on board and no way for the hunter to answer. And watch, the High Main's going to come down here, and RBG's just going to dump 9, 10, maybe more damage into the face and just ignore that High Main.
Well, especially because that sap just came into hand.
Right.
So what a lucky top deck here coming out from RBG. That's going to be an immediate answer to this High Main. A waste of a turn almost for Crescent.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a lot of damage. Let's oh, we're even going to put the deadly poison on top. Oh, RBG's looking for blood here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is they know that they have to press this advantage. They're literally out of cards. Sap is a great tempo card. It is a terrible value card because the opponent is just going to get that minion back in a turn. So
Mhm.
the sap basically buys you time, and that's exactly what RBG has done here. They said, okay, we have lethal in one turn, so if we just sap high main out of the way,
Who to
we've got
shoot?
this in the bag. And yeah, at the moment, I don't see a clean answer for Crescent in their hand. I think this one might be in the books already, Necra.
I think you're right about that. I think that sap basically just sapped all of the potential away from Crescent to come back into this game. But if you look at the Deathstalker Rexar,
What to
let's count
do?
this out here. If you put Rexar down, you do get a little bit of damage onto each of these minions. But what you're
Mhm.
really lacking is the last 4 burst in hand to deal with that Henge Clan Thug. You will be at 15 health, which
Now.
just barely, I think, puts you out of range of getting killed.
Yeah.
But let's see what Crescent has calculated here from the Tundra Rhino and the Timberwolves that might go down. I think this is at least enough damage to get rid of the... Oh, not even going to go for the Henge Clan Thug here.
Yeah. Yeah,
Interesting
this
choice.
I think what they're doing here is just allowing the Tundra Rhino to live, just in case they can sneak in a lethal on their own off of the high main. But
Yeah,
that's
but
unfortunately that's exactly lethal on the side of RBG.
gonna be a little bit of a miscalculation there from Crescent, but what an amazing way to start off this series, taking a look at what that Miracle Rogue can really do. So we have already got a one potential mirror match out of the way, because now that that Miracle Rogue has come and won, we don't get to see that again from RBG. So if Crescent brings it up, we'll never see that. But what do you expect Crescent to do here in this situation, knowing that RBG doesn't have that rogue to use anymore, and they might be going to Hunter or Warlock next?
I think Crescent is gonna rely on their rogue now as well, because it does have, as we just saw, it has a pretty good game against the Hunter.
It
So Crescent might
does.
try to equalize here with the rogue into whatever RBG decides to queue. And what remains to be seen is how Crescent gets a win with that cube Warlock. He's just got a bunch of red squares across the matchup chart. So we'll have to see if they decide to wait on that, or if they just try to get it out of the way now.
Cube Warlock's one of my favorite decks, and I'm really excited to see this in Crescent's lineup so far, because I think that the Cube Warlock does have a really great chance of winning a game if you are able to get to a long game. So as long as you're not getting outpaced with damage and you can get to a point where you have the oh, well, they're not, yeah, the Void Lords coming online, and then, you know, keeping the Void Lords and getting more taunts, just creating a massive wall in between your enemy and your face. It's good, it's a good time for a Cube Warlock. But that's not what we're gonna
Right.
see here at all, actually. We will be seeing, well, you got the right prediction off the bat here for Crescent. Crescent will be queuing up that Miracle Rogue that we just saw from RBG, but now RBG is going for the Control Priest, which was banned on the side of Crescent.
Right, and I think this is RBG reading the fact that that Crescent's highest percentage line is to go with the Pirate Rogue next. So they went ahead and queued their best chance against it, which is the Control Priest. According to the numbers, this is about a 50-50, and I think it relies a lot on how the early game goes, because the Control Priest has a lot of great tools to deal with the Pirate Rogue's early game, but if they don't draw those answers, then the Pirate Rogue just gets out of control really, really fast. And the Pirate Rogue does not have a great start here. But we can see from on the other side, the mulligan for the Priest is Dustbreaker, Wild Pyromancer, and the 1/3 Northshire Cleric, and Divine Hand. This is basically the perfect hand for them.
Yeah, this sounds like all of the answers that you were talking about the Priest needing in this matchup to stop the early game momentum that this Pirate Rogue can really bring out of their pocket here. Because you've got the card draw engine with the Northshire Cleric, which you're not even going to see go out this turn. It looks like it's just going to be a pass from RBG, not wanting to sacrifice the Cleric, because basically it'd just be fodder at this
Right.
point, knowing that that Saucy deckhand's already online.
Right, yeah, and it would just be throwing away potential card draw later, which is understandable. There's a school of thought that it's just a card for a card. You know, it's a clean trade of their early minion, and I think we might see on since turn 2 is going to come up with just dagger, dagger go face pass, that our RBG may even consider maybe they should have done that and gone with the 1/3 because Rogue just very very rarely has a 2 play. It's almost always a dagger play. So it would have at least stopped that deckhand from being built on after turn 1.
Well, what's the play then, knowing that we probably are going to see a Henge Clan Thug next turn from Crescent? What does RBG need to do in order to set themselves up to deal with that threat?
See, that's the other thing too. If by putting the cleric down, you entice the trade from the rogue and just leave them with a dagger and a clean board, then you can play something like a pyromancer just to be there to challenge the 4/4 from the Henge Clan Thug. So
Mhm.
without having challenged the deckhand, now there's a lot more power on board than just the 4/4, and the priest is going to have a much harder time of clearing this board.
Well, here's some interesting play here. You could use the Twilight Acolyte to steal the attack here from the Henge Clan Thug. But I
Mhm.
really wonder whether or not you want to save that for a potential, Twilight Acolyte, Cabal Shadow Priest combination here on a later turn. You do have multiple Dusk Breakers in hand now, but you're really just trying to get rid of damage at this point. That Henge Clan Thug's still going to get beefed up here with this next attack from the Rogue. And now I wonder whether or not that was a good choice for
Yeah,
RPG.
it this is the only way to challenge the Henge Clan Thug for RBG. But it's not going to be clean because, as you noted, that health is going to get bumped up by 1. So they're still going to have to invest more cards into this board state in order to clear the Thug. But as we can see, Crescent actually has some great tools here to deal with the 4/4,
Mhm.
and that's going to put them in a much bigger board lead. Although they do have to consider what comes up on turn 4 for the priest, because there's a possibility of the Dustbreaker, and of course there's also Coin Mass Hysteria, which is a threat. So they kind of have to be a little bit careful on expending too many resources here in this middle game.
So now this is where it sounds like it becomes a little bit more critical for Crescent to think about their next actions. The early game has already been very, very strong, but this seems like a little bit trickier of a situation. Looks like they're going to be investing quite a few resources here on the side of Crescent. You know, use the backstab, also the deadly poison, and just smack their own face to clear that 4/4.
Mhm.
Do you agree with that choice? And now what does RBG need to do to get themselves a place on this board?
Yeah, this is Crescent basically respecting the Dustbreaker. They don't want to throw the SI7 is their only other minion in hand. If they threw that into the Dustbreaker, then they're basically gassed out, and they
Yeah.
don't want to do that. And I actually just checked, and RBG does not run Mass Hysteria in this version of the deck, which is not uncommon because Dustbreaker does so much work kind of in that same role. So this Dustbreaker is not going to be a clean answer to the Henge Clan Thug. It's going to set it to a 3/2, and it's just going to keep growing because the Poison Dagger is just going to clear off that Dustbreaker and just make an even bigger Thug. Although at the very least, the priest has the second Dustbreaker, but no other dragon yet. They need to top deck a dragon for that Dustbreaker to be live.
Yeah, that's going to be an unfortunate role, I think, here for RBG. You don't really want to be in a position where you are dependent on those top decks, but at least knowing that there's some type of way to clear that if you are able to draw a dragon, I think is a great spot for RBG to be in. But this seems like another runaway game for the Rogue here,
Hmm.
where you just have a great curve. You've got a lot of resources early on to be able to control your class better than the other class can control you. So,
Right. And this green skin off the
wow.
top is such a critical top deck because this gives the dagger another turn worth of value to not only keep the board clean but also keep pumping up that Henge Clan Thug. That was a huge turn 5 for the Rogue and for Crescent Esports. So now no dragon comes off the top for the priest, and they've really got nothing to do here on turn 5.
Let's see whether or not these North Shore clerics can get something done here. It does look like it's just going to be a lot of resource dumping here for RBG, saying, hey, look at some of this stuff that I've got going on here. Can you deal with some of my card draw engines? I'm not really sure, but there's going to be
Yeah.
a lot of card draw. It's going to be a full heal up here for all of the minions. It's going to be an additional 6 health for that priest. And, ooh, seeing Shadow Reaper Anduin come in, that's huge.
Oh wow, yeah, that's going to play a big part of things. So this is probably what they were holding their cleric for in the instead of playing it on turn 1. They
Yeah.
wanted to try and create a big draw engine. This is a kind of a one of the big combos in the toolbox for the control priests that run the pyromancer. The only problem is it didn't do anything to address the board. They healed a little bit, and now Crescent may want to consider, do they answer these clerics to keep any further card from being drawn? But there's still 14 damage on the board, which is just a ton. And then they just drew Myra's Unstable Element, so they can just draw into an in-game scenario very, very quickly here if they want to.
Wow. I don't know if you quite have the mana to do so. I know you do have preparation in hand, but I don't know
Right.
whether or not this is an opportunity that Crescent really wants to take at the moment, because you wouldn't really be able to do a whole lot with it given how much mana you really have in your pool at the moment. But
Well, they can,
knowing that there's 14 damage on board, that I don't really know how RBG comes back from that, except to try to deal with some of this engine here.
yeah, so I think what Crescent's plan is here is to kind of do what you not go for the Myras yet, but leverage their board position, maintain it as best they can, make sure that they can't get traded away by the minion pressure, and then just build a basically threatening lethal here. And
This Dustbreaker.
they're gonna have to coin. Can they coin? No, they just use the coin, so they have to go Dustbreaker here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a juicy Dustbreaker, though. I was looking at that the moment that Twilight Drake came in hand. That was the dragon that
Yeah, you're right.
RBG needed, and then they were finally able to utilize that tool that they've been holding on for. And what better way to use it than to take out 3 minions that were such big threats on the side of Crescent?
Right, and now that the Crescent's totally gassed out, so Prep Myra's is coming up here, and they'll have 5 more mana to work with whatever comes off the top. So we'll see, and then of course Eviscerate too, if they just wanted to dump in 4 more damage. So some cheap pirates, another Hinch Clan thug, weapons, bursts. It's not bad. It's not bad. I don't know if they can assemble a lethal push here, but this is a lot of damage. This is 4, 8, 11. 11 damage if they wanted to, but they're going to go with the Falderai, which I think is fine.
I like that choice, yeah.
This is going to guarantee that 3 spiders get dumped out of the deck.
Yeah, not only that, but you're also staving off extra damage that you might start to take from fatiguing. But this is just the opportunity that Crescent wanted. They're going to push all of the damage that they have to face, especially knowing that they have a Dread Corsair standing between them and the damage that RBG can potentially output here. But we're getting into the later game, and this is where Priest can really take over. You do have the Death Knight, you have some of those bigger minions like the Primordial Drake that just got drawn that really have a lot of value in this matchup.
Right, and RBG is at 13 health. They have to be very, very careful about not just getting lethal down, because I'm sure they know that this deck is packing a lot of burst damage. We see both Eviscerates in the hand, and that's 4 mana, 8 damage, and they are way too low in health to ignore that kind of threat. So, but it looks like they're just going to go ahead and trade away the board here, which is perfectly fine, but doesn't do anything to keep them alive from any kind of burst damage from the hand.
Oh, not quite. But removing those minions on board is going to be really helpful here, because if you look at the burst damage that is in hand right now, you have an Eviscerate that could do 4, you have an SI7 agent that can do 2, but look at these spiders coming out. That is just, at least, oh boy.
Big oof.
Oh, that's so exciting.
It's going to demand nothing less than Psychic Scream from the Priest in order to continue to live. But I'm looking how many they have. 4, 8, 10. They have 13 damage available to them right now.
Yes.
Just in hand. They can set the Priest to 2. And then they know that the the spiders are going to force a psychic scream, so they can't heal. So this would basically put them in a Zugzwang situation where the priest cannot win.
That's true, because even if we got to a turn, because next turn you're going to have 8 mana on the side of the priest. You have the Primordial Drake. The Primordial Drake is going to do a little bit of damage to some of these spiders, but like, both of these players are thinking right now, what is their best chance to try to win this game? I don't know if we're going to see all this damage getting pumped out here, but we'll see. It's rope time.
Yeah, and this is not unusual. The Crescent squad is well known for thinking through every single possibility of their turns, and they actually went for a fairly passive position here. And I think this is probably okay. This still forces the Psychic Scream from the priest, and then this sets them up to once again dump in those Eviscerates plus the SI7 and secure the lethal, plus, you know, when you consider the weapon damage as well. So the Psychic Screams come in here. No heal available for the priest, so this should set up. Let me double check the mana. There's 3/6. Actually, oh, it's actually 1 mana short.
Ooh, that's not good. Well,
yeah,
that's unfortunate. I think that honestly, Crescent might have made a little bit of a misplay there, not utilizing 4 mana that turn. They allowed 4 mana to float, and I think they could have utilized that to set up a better turn here.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Because they could have, if not set the priest at 2, at least set them to a lethal position, you know, where they can just finish the game with the remainder of their cards. But now they're in a position where the weapon plus the SI7 and 2 Eviscerates is 10 mana, and they cannot finish the game now. So that I don't know if the priest can come back just yet. But you're right. I think that was possibly a missed opportunity for lethal there.
Yeah, not drawing another spider either. Well, you draw the spider, you don't draw the ambush. So you do draw a spider, but not being able to kind of set up a big board like that. We're going to see Crescent actually go for a different play here, not even going for that aggressive burst damage, but trying to set up minions as best as possible. But there's still tools now in the Priest's kit that are so much more available because of the mana pool that they have at this point in the game.
Right, and the Primordial Drake is a thought, although it wouldn't save them from double Eviscerate, which, you know, that RBG may be betting that they don't have it. So the Holy Fire will at least clear the Thug and heal 5. So that's a possibility. So they're finding ways to live. What I don't see is a way for them to win. That's the big issue. They're staying alive for as long as they possibly can, but how do they turn this into a winning position? Because there's only so many Psychic Screams in the deck, right? They can't continue doing that, and more spiders are just going to keep coming out of the deck.
Well, let's see what this Holy Fire can do here. So I think that was a pretty excellent pickup from the Shadow Visions that RBG utilized there. It does remove the Henge Clan Thug, which was a big threat if Crescent was able to continue to buff it up with multiple turns of it sitting on board and no answer. But this is going to be a lot of burst damage here coming out from Crescent. I think this is going to be, that's game.
Yeah, Crescent kind of drew it out, I think. They could have probably done it a turn faster, but they got the job done. I think each one of those board states was basically an unwinnable position for the priest, and they just wanted to press the advantage as much as they could until before delivering the lethal. They didn't want to reveal the Eviscerates until they had lethal, right? So it's an understandable play. It got them there all the same.
Yeah, that's very true. I think that the way that Crescent played it was very cautious. So, both of us looking at that position and also knowing what RBG had in their hand to be able to address some of those things, whether or not they had the burst healing or whatever. I do appreciate that Crescent was playing it safe and thinking through all of those options that might have surfaced. So it's very easy for us to sit here and say, you could have done it faster, but I think they did play it the way that they needed to. And now we're going to see something totally different, at least from Crescent. So now going to have to retire the rogue that they just won with. Both of these players now without the rogue in their pockets. It's going to be RBG on the Control Priest again, and Crescent's going to go for that Cube Warlock.
Yeah, they have to queue up the Q block at some point. They
May as well
can't
do it now.
continue to avoid it, so they're gonna go for it. And Q block is one of these decks that, in the hands of most players, it's, it's probably in the tier 2, tier 3 level, but there are people who specialize in this deck who basically do nothing but play Cube Warlock, and they know every variation there is.
That
And
was me for like 4 seasons, I'm not
like,
gonna lie.
people who specialize in Cube Warlock are terrifying to play against, and I can't vouch for any of the Crescent players if they're at that level with it, but I have to believe that if they made the conscious choice to take it in this competitive tournament, that somebody on that squad knows exactly how to play Cube Warlock.
Well, that's exciting because I for one am a big Cube Warlock fan. I have played this deck for 4 seasons and literally this deck alone, and I gotta say, Crescent's off to a pretty good start here. Not being able to go turn 2 and getting a Mountain Giant to be able to smack down on turn 3, that's actually insane. And looking at the
Yeah.
deck lists, RBG really doesn't have an answer to that. So it's going to be an 8/8 giant kind of coming, or not.
No, what they're doing, they're setting up the cube skull, or the coin skull, right? So
Oh,
they
I like that better.
they lock out. They're going to lock out the foreplay from. Pardon me. The 4 mana play from the priest.
The foreplay.
So no Twilight Drake going to be played into the Doomsayer. This allows them to go coin skull on turn 4, or they're going to go Mountain Giant.
I knew it.
Either one.
Oh, that's my favorite play. And that is an excellent position to be in as a Cube Warlock, knowing that you do have this massive threat. But the Twilight Acolyte is going to make that a small fry there. Oh, we have an update for you. So it's going to be attack mode. Going to be winning their round 2, 3-1. So that's going to bring them up in the Swiss rounds here.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
exciting because that's our producer's
Yeah. And honestly, like, the Fate to Karma team is no joke. Clark Hellscream is at the lead of that team, and he is a high legend player. And look at this though. This, even despite the Twilight Acolyte, the Spellbreaker in hand to reverse the attack bonus penalty to dump in 8. So just Crescent just going for it here. They're just like, all right, you're gonna have to live with this giant forever until you answer it, and then when they answer it, the skull's gonna be right behind it.
Okay, well, I like this from Crescent, and I'll explain why. So being able to smack 8 damage into RBG's face not only puts them in a little bit of a pinch, but it is also setting the pace for the battle, and that's exactly what Crescent wants to do here. They want to be able to play at the forefront of the game, not on the back foot, and you'll see that the bait worked. RBG is going to sacrifice their own minion for the trade rather than getting off an additional 8 damage, because they would be so behind if they allowed 12 damage to hit them again, and that is not a position that you want to be in if you're a priest. You really don't ever want to be that low, regardless of the amount of healing resources that you have.
Right, and that it's kind of like trying to get the priest to dedicate resources to dealing with the giant first, so that the skull kind of has a better chance of going unchallenged. And there's also the approach that they may not want to start doing skull demon shenanigans until they get a cube in hand, and then that way they can start duplicating Doom Guards and doing the things that Cube Block does. So understandable that they may have held on the skull until now, but here it comes. Now they're ready.
Oh yeah, I think that's going to be a really great way to continue to get that damage in. Forcing RBG to utilize those healing resources so early means that they're not going to have them later on when you are going to be facing down a 5/7 Doom Guard when it comes out from Skull of the Minari next turn. So that's really exciting. Even if it wasn't going to be a Doom Guard, getting out any of those Void Lords earlier than turn 9 is huge. But yeah, there's that Doom Guard. It is going to be able to so easily deal with that Scale Worm. or the Acolyte, or you know what, just push damage to face because you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, either one. There's no easy answer for the Doom Guard on board, but I want to point out that RBG has very quietly been assembling a 2-turn lethal.
Yeah.
Alex Strauss has all been in hand since the mulligan. They picked up a Mind Blast off of a Shadow Visions, and they just drew the second one, so they've got 15 damage just hanging out in their hand. And of
Yep.
course, Alex will set you to 15, and if the that makes the Warlock both have to heal out of range and deal with Alex Strauss at the same time, which may not be possible. So this, even though this has been a really strong start for the Warlock, do not count RBG out of this match.
I would 100% agree with you there. I've been silently chuckling because of the number of purple, golden Mind Blasts that we have seen on the side of RBG. That's scary. I would never want to be in a position like that because it really could be an all or nothing, like, just a huge thing there. Oh, but even the Spellstone?
Yeah, they want to they have no way to duplicate this Doom Guard, so they're trying to protect it from being traded off the board as much as possible, which is understandable. They picked up Umbra, which is a fantastic card, but they don't have anything to pair it with. So they really want to protect this Doom Guard long enough to get it into a cube in order to do some shenanigans later on.
Shenanigans.
Shenanigans.
we're tripping all over our words tonight because we've got some amazing plays happening on both sides of the field. But that's gonna be that Doom Guard come and went here. Is that Holy Fire taking it out of the fight. But that does mean, knowing that we do see the Blood Reaver Gul'dan in Crescent's hand, that is going to be coming back very quickly. Unfortunate it's not going to stay around because Faceless Manipulator did just get brought into the hand.
Big oof for Crescent. They did not want to see that Doom Guard die before getting any of their duplication effects in hand, so this is going to force them to tap. They did tap into a Void Lord, so that's super, super helpful. Question being, do they want to throw out Spirit Singer Umbra maybe to force out some Void Walkers with the Void Lord when it hits the board next turn? Probably, I would guess no. You don't want Void Walkers just hanging out in your deck from a Psychic Scream. So they might just go Doomsayer Pass here just to keep the board clean ahead of turn 9.
That might stave off. It at least saves one turn here from RBG doing the shenanigans that they want to. I can't even say that with a straight face because it's just that funny. To me, anyway.
They might just go for it anyway. They might just drop Alex and say, all right, what you gonna do? Like, because if you once Alex hits the board, it's pretty much a telegraph saying, I've got 3 Mind Blasts. What are you gonna do about it?
That's very true. So that would mean that RBG is kind of having to live on a prayer here. So well, I'm sorry, Crescent's gonna have to do that. They're gonna have to rely on potentially getting their second copy of the Spellstone, because we already just saw one of them utilized it. So there's no potential to buff it up in hand right now. But yeah, that's going to be 15, and this is going to be a prayer here. Holy cow.
Yeah, so this is the
oh my god!
They got it. Are you kidding me? Yeah, they and the funny thing is they absolutely have to do it. They cannot.
They have no choice.
Yeah, they're just going to use it to heal for 3, which will keep them alive. And honestly, that's a big deal too, because what other burst is going to come out of the Control Priest aside from Anduin? Of course, and Anduin is nowhere to be found.
Not yet, and I don't know if Crescent knows that, but you're right. If this is going to be kind of a very standard play of Alex Strauss into triple Mind Blast, Crescent probably knows it's about to hit them, so I think that they're going to have to sacrifice one of their Voidwalkers here in order to keep themselves in the game. But that's just staving off one turn. If RBG is able to come up with something to be able to deal with the rest of these Voidwalkers and create a board presence, that is going to be a lot to deal with. But know that Blood Reaver Gul'dan is in hand. So we'll see what happens here as Yeah, that's gonna be just one off of lethal. Oh my
My
goodness.
goodness. And that was a very careful calculation by Crescent. They said, okay, we're dead to 3 Mind Blasts, but if we tap and then Spellstone, we're not. So they set themselves potentially to
Just
1 damage,
barely.
but yeah, but now RBG cannot deploy those Mind Blasts. Now they have to recreate a board
Yeah.
because and it's coming on to turn 10, and you have to live with the risk that Gul'dan is in hand, which it is. So if they would have set Crescent to 1 damage, and then Crescent plays Blood Reaver Gul'dan, the priest probably loses the game. So
Yeah.
now they have to try and play the board again. So here comes the Primordial Break, basically to that effect. And honestly, like, I don't see any world where you don't 360 windmill slam Gul'dan here on turn 10.
Yeah, I am going to agree with you there because there comes a time in the cube warlock gameplay that you just need to try to sustain yourselves as much as possible, and it tends to happen when you're facing a priest. So whenever you see Gul'dan come into hand, you smack that down as fast as it enters, like as soon as you possibly can, because having the ability to heal yourself is so much more important in the matchup when you know you're facing down that burst damage than being
Mhm.
able to get card draw, because they're at this point, I don't think you really need it as much.
Right. And the healing though is, I mean, yeah, you're right. Like they can only do so much damage from hand. It's very predictable.
Yeah.
There's there's either going to be 15 from 3 Mind Blasts, 16 from 2 Mind Blasts and 3 Anduins, or 19 from 2 Anduins and 3 Mind Blasts.
Yeah.
So it's super predictable, and if you can get yourself out of those calculable ranges, you can pretty much cruise control the rest of the game. But they gotta live through the rest of these turns. It's not over yet.
Yeah.
The priest still has quite a lot of fight in it.
Yeah, and especially with the draw engine that they have now with the Northshire Cleric. A Psychic Scream?
Yeah, this whole board's gonna get screamed.
Oh, yeah, that's out of here. That is absolutely not going to stick around. And now any board presence that RBG is able to put up really doesn't have a whole lot to fight against, and that's a terrible draw.
Ouch! Oh, Voidwalker, and that's exactly what we were talking about. You hate having Voidwalkers on the board against priests because they just get screamed into the deck, and you get these
Yeah.
terrible 1-drops in the late game. And RBG's actually been holding a Psychic Scream for a couple turns, and they just went with the one off the top deck just to kind of try and communicate to Crescent that they don't have the other one in hand. But if Crescent tries to rebuild the board, they're going to get some bad news. And they don't even have to play the Skull or the Void Walker, because the Skull will just pull out the Void Walker later. But they don't have any, like, there's no power in Crescent's hand. Swamp
No.
Ooze is the most powerful minion they have. Like, this is so
sad.
bad.
Yeah, that's a little sad. But at this point, too, Crescent's just trying to get themselves out of range of being blasted down by that, classic priest burst damage at the end. So you're going to see a Siphon Life, I think, come out every single turn
Yeah.
that Crescent's
100%.
able to do so. We're going to see this Warlock back at full health in the next couple of turns.
Yeah, you're right.
That's
And
scary.
yeah, it is. And Crescent really needs to draw the remainder of their big threats. They also need a cube. They have been cubeless in New Orleans this whole time. But
Yeah.
RBG just kind of also biding their time. They're trying to wait for Anduin. It's kind of their only possibility. Another duplication effect for Crescent, and no cube, no demons. So again, just very weak hand for really on both sides of the board. I mean, the priest has nothing but answers and damage, but no reason to use them yet.
Honestly, if it comes down to it, we're going to end up seeing a lot of... it's just a battle of the hero powers here. After 20 turns or so, we might see this game go in the way of the Warlock. But hopefully that's not exactly what we're going to see here. I think that RBG is looking to utilize some of the resources that they've been holding on in their hand, and one of those is going to be the Wild Pyromancer. Talk me through why they might choose that here, and why not go with something else. Like, what does the damage do on the side of the Wild Pyromancer?
I think they're just trying to challenge the board.
Mhm.
The effect is not as important as just having a 3 attack minion to try to trade away some of these smaller minions that Crescent has played. Uh,
Mhm.
but also interestingly, Possessed Lackey just came on board, and
Yeah.
that's going to pull one of the demons out of the deck. Although there are still 2 Void Walkers hanging out in the deck, so it's a risky play if Crescent decides to go for it. But if they want to accelerate this game state, they're going to have to start, doing something outside the bounds of the game, like recruit.
Yeah,
Dusky Boy finally
recruits.
gets a dragon, though.
Oh, that's huge. This is like, I feel like RBG's been getting so lucky with some of these dragon draws, but that's going to
Yeah,
be another juicy dust breaker to really change the tide of this game a little bit to RBG's
yeah.
favor. But this Possessed Lackey is going to be big. Ooh, the Mountain Giant, that's pretty big too.
Yeah, our
That's a
Crescent
card.
could definitely go with like they could even like Giant Faceless and just put 2 8/8s, but that runs a very high risk of getting Anduin. I don't think they'll go with that. But yeah, this board state now on the side of RBG, now it's threatening. Now you've got 7 damage that's going to be hitting in continuously, uh, unless it gets cleared, and Siphon Soul will clear off the Dustbreaker. But that 4/7 is going to stick, and
Mhm.
that's what they need. They need to continue to pressure the Warlock's life total, because every turn that Anduin does not come online is a turn where Siphon Life just continues to bring them further and further away from an in-game scenario. So they need a minion to stick here in order to win against this Warlock.
What do you think the odds are that Crescent might try to double Mountain Giant here? Because we haven't seen Anduin come up yet from RBG.
Yeah.
And there's 8 cards left in the deck, so when is it going to appear? And do you think that Crescent's just saying, hey, screw it, like, I need to get something to stick on board?
Yeah, I think just the single giant. They needed to Siphon Soul the Twilight or the Dustbreaker. They had
Yeah.
to. Like, they can't let 7 damage stick. So Giant Siphon Soul is perfectly reasonable. Another kind of weak draw from Innovation. Acolyte doesn't really do anything here, and the 4/7 is just going to end up getting traded away by the Giant. So like, RBG's is still in a rough spot, and they're just waiting and waiting for Anduin to come. He's 23 cards deep, and he's still not gotten him yet.
That's not a fantastic position to be in, especially because in this meta, we complain a lot about how it really seems to be reliant on who draws the Death Knight first and who
Right.
plays it first. And this seems to be an instance that's playing out our worst nightmares here, with Blood Reaver Gul'dan hitting the field and really sucking the life out of RBG right now.
Yeah, and RBG they went for it with the Alex earlier on. It ended up not paying off because Crescent drew, like, I think they top decked the Spellstone right after that play. So these 3 Mind Blasts have just been sitting in hand doing nothing, and a Dustbreaker with no dragon in hand. So just a 3/3. Again, just nothing really available to contest this giant, and Crescent is now back to 30 health. And
Yep.
this is a very difficult position for the priest. Like, Anduin, they're just praying to whatever beings they can out in the cosmos to get them a Death Knight so they can start putting down some damage on board and answer this giant. But I mean, they're even just handing out the Acolyte for a single card, like, just anything.
And there's a cube. So if you
Finally a
didn't
cube.
think things could get worse for RBG, they're about to. Because that
Yeah.
cube might create more giants, and that is more pressure, and guess what? Still no Anduin. So I feel like Crescent is playing into a situation here where he does want to pressure RBG enough that they get
Mhm.
forced to play the Anduin before this cube comes down. Because once
And-
that pops, that's a juicy Anduin play.
Oh yeah, and I think that's the main reason why Crescent may not try to create a huge board of giants, because Anduin will just clear it and they'll be robbed of all that value, and they may not even want to leave cubes on board because they if Crescent's paying attention, they know that there's still a Psychic Stream in play somewhere, and so they need to respect that, because if they cube out something like if they go like cube onto the giant and then maybe duplicate it somehow, and then just get screamed into the deck, they've basically just lost 4 giants, and they don't want to do that. I think they're just going
Yeah.
to continue to pressure with this single mountain giant and say go. 25, 26 cards deep, no Anduin yet.
That's an unlucky draw. I wonder whether or not RBG utilized all their luck in the first couple of matchups that we've seen so far, because not seeing Anduin is a big oof here, especially when you know what's about to come. But that might play out really well too. If Crescent hasn't seen that Anduin yet, they might slip up a little bit. They might get a little comfortable and
Yeah.
feel ready to really kind of bring down the heat with those those mountain giants. But you know, if you are RBG, what do you do here to try to deal damage to this warlock?
Well, you know, they just drew into the Primordial Drake, which actually turns the Twilight Acolyte on. So they could answer this giant by going Acolyte, Cabal Shadow Priest, which creates a board. And they go for the Dustbreaker here. I'm a little surprised.
Oh, they're gonna use a Mind Blast.
Yeah, just to activate the effect off of the Pyromancer.
Wow.
This is a weaker board than the Acolyte play, and they may be holding that for the Doomguard, you know, because they still know there are 2 Doomguards that have not. Well, there was one earlier.
There's 1 Doomguard left in the deck.
I think one got Psychic Screamed into the deck though, so I think they're back to 2.
Yes, it was the Doomguard that got popped from the Blood Reaver Gul'dan. So there are 2 in the deck at the moment, and none of them so far have come up for Skull of the Minari to pull on their own. But that Godfrey was going to be able to clear out all of RBG's board, and they're just trying to get some sense of board presence back with the Primordial deck. But where's this Anduin? Where is he? Where is our high savior? Like, I'm not really sure. But, you know, I'm looking at the state of the board. I'm looking at the tools that Crescent has in hand. And I am just seeing a really, really big wall for RBG to have to climb over. There are too many resources. There's still 11 cards in Crescent's deck. And they have so many answers to whatever kind of pressure and board presence that RBG is going to be able to put on the board.
And, you know, I'm interested that they went ahead and deployed the Primordial Drake there, because I think they could have had a reasonable answer with the Twilight Drake, but I think they wanted that taunt because there's still a possibility that a Doomguard pops out and gets duplicated, and with the 4 damage of Godfrey on board, they just dead to stuff. So I felt like they needed to play the Primordial Drake. So it's the Crescent's gonna use the file here to answer it. Interesting.
That's okay. They're you know, when you have a hand that's as big as Crescent's, I don't think it matters how many cards you utilize to try to deal with that kind of you know, threat on board. But there's the Anduin. Finally, in the last 3 cards of the deck. I guess it's better late than never.
It is, although, you know, at this point, RBG is forced to use it just because they need the hero power to start creating pressure, especially with one of the Mind Blasts having been deployed to activate the Pyromancer. But now the Giants and the Doomguards are going to go without a clear challenge, because Anduin would have just cleared any big board that Crescent tried to build. So this is just late is just awful for Anduin here.
Yeah. I don't really see a scenario here where Crescent doesn't take this. And it's just because they still have those pesky Doomguards still in the deck. And now there really is no good way to get rid of them on the side of RBG unless you utilize your last Psychic Scream. So that's the kind of damage that you're looking at trying to stave off here. But they're just going to come back.
Right. And Dark Pact finally being seen by Crescent, so they have a number of ways to activate the Possessed Lackey if they want to, and also the Carnivorous Cube if they decide to deploy that combo. And I wonder if Crescent is just trying to force RBG to use that second Psychic Scream so that they know they can deploy onto the board, without any way for the priest to answer. That they maybe just be biding their time, knowing the priest is kind of in an unwinnable position here.
Continue to play it safe. I feel like that's something that Crescent's done really well this whole series so far, especially when they were playing the Rogue, where we talked about how there were multiple instances where they probably could have taken the game before they did. But I think that they've been executing really great control over wanting the desire to put out the resources, right?
Right.
And also knowing that they do kind of need to balance that with just potential threats that they might see from the side of RBG. But there are less and less resources now for RBG. They are running out of cards, they're running out of options. And do you think that they're going to be able to have the damage here to outdo the heal potential on the Warlock? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. They're, Crescent, with as patient as Crescent has been, they've outweighted, almost all the board clears. There's just the single scream yet, and now you see they've finally gotten RBG to force out the Cabal Shadow Priest just for pressure. And I think this is a clear signal. This is RBG signaling unintentionally that we're basically out of threats. We don't have anything else to play. And that also means that without the Cabal Priest to pair with the Twilight Acolyte, then there's no chance to steal any minions. So they can't steal cubes, they can't steal Doom Guards, they can't steal Void Lords.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a desperation move from RBG, and I think Crescent probably knows it.
Yeah, and they're going to go for full board clear here, too. So this is going to be the last one. But, ooh, the last card in the deck was a Cabal Shadow Priest.
Yep.
So this game might not be over yet. If we are able to see some sort of massive cube play from Crescent get punished by RBG, then we might still have a series on our hands.
And do they even play anything? Like, Crescent doesn't really even have to play cards here. They've got RBG in fatigue. They can continue to deal damage every turn with the hero power. Anduin's hero power does not heal any longer, so they can just wear him down in fatigue. Like, they don't really have to do anything here.
They really don't. But I think we're going to see just a general kind of cry for help here coming out from RBG. They're gonna dump all of the burst damage that they had out to just try to keep mana out of the hands of Crescent. So you're gonna still use Void Form or the Siphon Life, which is gonna take 2 out of your mana pool every single turn. But they didn't even need to do that now, because what kind of damage can we really do even with the reset of Void Form?
Right. Well, like RBG, they want to continue to hold that Acolyte Cabal Shadow Priest combo for something. Like they're waiting for Crescent to play something. It's their one chance to kind of swing back the game, and that's why they just dumped all their damage out. They're like, okay, let's just get rid of the Mind Blast. There's no point in floating the mana. And look at this Crescent just playing the Faceless Manipulator, just for heal, just to heal it with the Dark Pact. That's how sly Crescent is. They know that they've got this game won in fatigue. They know that there's no more burst damage for the priest, and they're just gonna wait him out. This is just brutal.
Yeah, this is brutal. I think this is pretty brutal here. And this is going to be just another last-ditch effort here from RBG to try to assemble some amount of board presence moving into the later parts of the game. But the Skull of the Minari is going to shut down a lot of opportunities here that RBG was waiting for. And they're giving up at this point. I think that's exactly what they needed to do. GG go next, right? Because they still have another deck to utilize, and the Priest might do a little bit better against the final deck that Crescent has, and that's going to be a mid-range hunt.
Yeah, and the big question was, can Crescent win with the Cube Warlock? The answer is yes. I think there may, there's the question of why didn't Crescent play any cards?
Yeah.
Was that bad sportsmanship? I don't think so. I think they knew that once the burst damage was gone, then all they had to do is rely on their hero power and wait for fatigue. They don't have to expend any cards. Everything in the priest's hand was there to punish them for playing cards, so they just didn't
Yes.
play any cards.
I think that's what you have to do in that scenario, and there are a lot of players that would get very greedy in that scenario, and this is what
I
we
would.
talked about. You know, I would too. I absolutely would, and I play this deck a lot. But you know, you always do walk that fine line, like we were talking about before, about the desire to play greedy and do fun things, but also the control that you need to exercise in order to seal the deal. And that's what we saw from Crescent. And holy cow, this starting hand from Crescent and
Whew,
from
man,
RBG, my
both.
goodness,
They
both of
both
them.
have all the at least a good chunk of the stuff you want to see. Spring Paw for sure. You'd rather have a Dire Mole, but Spring Paw's not bad. Although this on the side of RBG they have Spring Paw with the hyena with the Razor Maw, and that's just yikes.
That's a big yikes there. And this is going to be a really good position, I think, for RBG to start out with. And we're going to see a coin hyena 100% because there is not a whole lot that is in the Hunter's toolkit that can really deal with it unless you want to utilize the Spring Paws here. And the chances of you having a Spring Paw in your early hand are very low. But I think as soon as this hyena hits the board, we're going to see Crescent deal with that pretty easily here. And they have actually a very clean way to deal with it too. You could just utilize the Spring Paw and smack it into the hyena and completely remove it from the board. But I don't know.
It's the turn 2 hyena from RBG here is it's a risk, right? They're weighing, do they have a Spring Paw in hand?
High
But it's
risk,
also
high reward.
right, and it's also a nod to the fact that Crescent is not running the Headhunter's Hatchet, which RBG is, and the Headhunter's Hatchet would be a clean answer to like a hyena with no other support on the board. So, but unfortunately, Crescent had it in hand, so RBG's kind of back to the drawing board here.
This is an awkward turn for RBG too, because you can either utilize the Headhunter's Hatchet and not get the Battle Cry with the extra durability, or you could put down a Razor Maw. And you don't really want to put down the Razor Maw because it's just going to be fodder to the Candle Shot and the links that got dropped from the Spring Paw. But Crescent here now just going to try to see if they can start maybe doing the same thing. They're looking at the choices here from the tracking. What would you take here? This is a really difficult choice.
Yeah, it's like the hyena is your explosive potential. You're holding a lynx, so it's not it's a thought. The animal companion has just more raw power, but then the Master's Call is a huge card in this matchup.
Yeah,
this game is the Hunter's Mirror is about initiative and card advantage, and the hunter that has both wins the game, and if you have one and not the other, it's a tough match. So I would imagine they're going to go for this Master's Call. Yeah, they went for it.
I think that's really smart here from Crescent because it will replenish a lot of resources, especially when they matter the most. But hey, look at that! RBG's luck's not run out yet. We are going to see another Scavenging Hyena enter into hand, but there's still the threat of the Lynx and the Candle Shot. I think with this tracking choice seems a little bit cleaner here, I think, from RBG.
Yeah, the high main's really hard to pass up, but the high main's also 4 turns away. So they went ahead for the Animal Companion because honestly, like if they can't play that card for 3 or 4 turns, then they may as well not have drawn it. Yeah. So they went for the Animal Companion in order to have something to do. And the Master's Call here is going to pay off dividends. Here comes the Dire Mole that's going to finally secure the board for one side of this matchup.
And that side is going to be Crescent. So Crescent having a lot, kind of their pick of the litter here of what they want to put down with the last mana that they have. I do expect that Dire Mole to hit the floor just because there is a potential of pulling out a Crackling Razor Maw in your next draw, or being able to put down maybe a Tundra Rhino next turn. There's a
Mhm.
lot of options here. But we're gonna
Ooh.
see that RBG does have a really nice way to buff up a Hyena here if they wanted to, and a clean way to deal with that Dire Maul, so it doesn't become a situation that they faced before, whether it's a 4-3 Dire Maul or like a 1-6 or something like that. But oh, not even going to try to buff up a Hyena here. Just hitting
Yeah.
Misha.
I'm surprised by that. They had an opportunity there to make a 6/4 Hyena that is
Hmm.
extremely difficult to challenge. I guess what they're respecting is flanking strike candle shot, because
Hmm.
that would have cleaned it off, right? So this creates a similar threat. It's a 4/4 that also has to be answered. So this will kind of bait out the removal, and maybe give RBG a cleaner shot at getting a buffed up Hyena later on. Plus, also holding Tundra Rhino, you kind of want to try to pair those two together, right? Like
Yes,
if you
absolutely.
can get a huge Hyena going and then give it charge, yeah, that's the one you want.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. So we might maybe see the Scavenging Hyena come in a couple of turns here. But here's a really clean way answer for that Misha, and that's exactly the play that you mentioned before that would have been able to deal with a 6-4 Hyena. So that was absolutely not of respect there. I think that RBG played that as best they possibly could, knowing that they were at risk for seeing that play from Crescent. But now Crescent has the board presence, and we're going to need to see RBG come out with something. But that Rexar is going to look really,
Oof.
really good in a
Yeah.
couple of, like
I'll tell
next
you what,
turn, probably.
now is a great time to set up this Hyena,
Hmm.
because they can actually back it up with some support, like from this Razor Maw. So Divine Shield or the Stealth. Oh, the Stealth is huge. So
Yeah.
they're gonna use a Lynx to trade away this Wolf along with the Hatchet and start building up that Hyena, and that's gonna get real ugly real fast.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have picked the Divine Shield over the Stealth, but I
Mhm.
do like the Stealth here because it does ensure that that Hyena is going to stick around. You can't target it anymore with a flanking strike or with, a candle shot to pop the Divine Shield first.
Right.
And there's no threat right now of Rexar that we can see in Crescent's hand. So I think this does put it out of the range of Rexar coming down two and having that AoE, but Crescent has some pretty good tools to utilize here too. Lots of beasts in the zoo.
Yeah, they have to find a way to utilize this card advantage that they have. They use the Master's Call to get way ahead on hand, but have fallen behind on board. And
Hmm.
this is kind of, there's not a lot of gas left for RBG. So if Crescent can find a way to challenge the Hyena, then they could be in good shape going into the late game. And the high main is definitely one way to do it. They're gonna have to RBG is gonna have to find a way to not have this high main just trade away the Hyena next turn, and that's a tall order, because there's 9 health worth of stuff in that card. So that's a
Yeah.
that's gonna be tricky. My feeble caveman brain doesn't see a way to do it in their hand, but I wouldn't be surprised if the folks at RBG had a way to figure this out.
Well, let's see whether or not this tracking can do anything too. So
Yeah.
I feel like you might have to rely on some amount of RNG here with doing tracking, maybe drawing some other smaller minions that might be able to buff up this hyena. But even these spring paws here that might find a way to trade are not going to bring this hyena out of range of this Savannah Highmane. But guess what they're gonna do? It's gonna be out of range if you don't have the hyena of the hyena at all. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
gonna be a 10-6 hyena. We're gonna see whether or not we can buff this up or do something to relieve the pressure on board from there. But seeing that Master's Call, I don't know if you can really take anything else
Oh no, not at
from that
all.
set because you
Like,
are behind in cards.
right, the flanking strike did nothing there. The other card that flashed by my eyes didn't really have much of an effect there. But yeah, the Master's Call. You've got 3 mana. You've got no cards. Pretty much says Master's Call time. And Crescent will be able to answer this hyena in a number of ways. They can Razor Maw for an effect. They can kill command it. They can flanking strike it. They have options, and
Mhm.
the card advantage that they've been leveraging so far, I think,
Oh,
is about to pay off.
poisonous.
Like the poisonous come up, that's so good.
Oh, you don't pick anything else when you see the poisonous come up in a 10-6 hyena in your face, so that's
Yeah,
gonna be a very easy clear here for Crescent, and that leaves them with more of those resources to utilize for other ways. So we were looking at that kill command to be a potential way to deal with that 10-6 hyena, maybe a spring paw, but now you can utilize the spring paws to buff up a hyena. You can utilize the kill command as extra burst damage, but I don't see a scenario where this Rexar doesn't come down to deal with the hyena and the Razor Maw that we see on the other side. So,
I think there's another line there where you just kill command the rhino,
yeah.
because that the tundra rhino is way too powerful to leave on the board, and
Oh, we're
RPG
gonna
left it
see
on the
that.
board. I think I think this could be a critical decision point for RBG, because that tundra rhino can lead to all kinds of mayhem if left up, because the deck is nothing but beasts and damage. So if you leave something that gives that all charge on the on the board, guess what's going to happen? It's all going to get charged.
Yeah, and we're gonna see even another Tundra Rhino enter Crescent's hand.
Yeah.
So look at this. You could Crackling Razor Maw to try to buff up the Tundra Rhino to let it stay on board a little bit longer. You could I don't know, anything you put on there is going to be able to rush at RBG's face. And even
Right.
though we do see that extra 5 armor here coming out and that Rexar coming down with the Build-A-Beast in tow, I kind of wonder whether or not the damage has already been done. That
Mm.
Rhino's sticking around. That's scary.
They're actually going to Razor
Wind
Maw the
Fury.
links here, which is interesting. The Wind Fury, though, it's a 1/1, although it does get a little damage buff here from the Timberwolf. This is what I mean. This is a ton of damage. Like, that's 3, 5, 7, 11, 12 damage, plus the hero power for 8, just because you left the 2/3 on board. And that's the danger of leaving the Tundra Rhino alive.
And now there's no clean way for RBG to deal with the board that is
Hmm.
on Crescent side. So you can put down a Tundra Rhino of your own. You have 3 mana left, but what do you take out of this fight? I think I agree with you there, where we might have had to see a kill command come out onto the Tundra Rhino on Crescent side, because they just took 9 damage that they otherwise wouldn't have taken if that charge had not been online.
Right. And the hero power, the Rexar hero power, it's tempting, but honestly, like, Hunter does damage in chunks, right? You might only see like 2 damage on board, but rest assured that there's like 10 more sitting in hand. So if you're not at 30, Rexar is a big risk to take if you don't have a way to deploy something on board to challenge or to protect yourself. And now you can see, like, now this is their first opportunity to use Build-A-Beast, and nothing that they can build is going to be sufficient to get them out of the hot water here. They're going to have to rely on the stuff in hand, which they could have done last turn.
Yeah, and with the Build-A-Beast too, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I feel like anything that you'd be able to pull out from the Build-A-Beast that has Lifesteal, Charge, it's going to be too expensive
Yeah.
to play on the turn that you build it. And we're going to see here that this is just going to be a clean win for Crescent. There's a lot of damage that came out at the very end there. And yeah, these were good
That's it.
games.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there were some key decision points there, that we talked about quite a bit. Do you deploy stuff against the priest, or do you hold and wait for the fatigue game? And we saw
Yeah.
that Crescent piloted that uh, perfectly. And when do you use Rexar? When do you not use Rexar? You can see if you do not respect the Tundra Rhino and try to go for the Rexar, you kind of get punished almost every single time. So these important macro decisions were on display tonight, Necra. So it's great to see the decisions that the players make, and the after effects of those decisions, whether they be right or wrong.
It is nice to see that, because there are some games where you do see some players that just go into autopilot and they don't really have to decide. But both of these players took their time tonight thinking about every realm of possibility. I just think that Crescent did that a little bit better tonight. But This is just the first 2 rounds of Swiss. There are more rounds to come. It is I Yeah, so we've got lots of matches still to bring to you. Not tonight though, but later on in the weeks to come. We're going to be seeing more of these players, more of these teams, and I just can't wait.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride so far. We've got some really top notch teams. We saw earlier today. We saw Lazarus, which with the Lazarus squad is just a team of champions,
Yeah.
and they were undefeated up until just a little while ago. Endemic Esports, another team of champions, beat them. So Endemic is now the only undefeated team in this league. And this is, but there's a lot of great teams, as kind of like undercards that have very talented players that are waiting for their breakout moment, and this is one of their breakout moments. They're on display
Yeah.
for you here in House Rivalries.
It's a great stomping grounds, and I think this is a really good break from the meta or this format that we've been playing in so far for all those online Masters qualifiers. We've switched over to the specialist format, which has a polarizing kind of opinion there.
Yeah,
But this is playing in, Total Conquest again. It just feels like home. It feels like a breath of fresh air, and I'm really
right.
excited that we get a chance to bring that to you all today.
Yeah, I, I
So,
I don't think the conquest and last year is standing or going anywhere. There are going to be people who
no.
just want to continue playing in these formats. The deck diversity is nice. There's the lineup building phase has a whole level of strategy on built into it. So and there are people who like specialists, and that's okay. But I'm glad that there are still events like this where we're still playing multi deck, multi class formats.
Yeah. But this is gonna be not it's not over yet for either of these teams. We're gonna see more of them, and I can't wait to bring that to you. But it will be next Saturday, same time, same place, right here on the CCG channel. So if you're excited and you don't know when it's gonna happen, go ahead and give it a follow. Make sure that you're all in on the action that's gonna be happening for NA House Rivalries. But I think that's gonna be it for us tonight. We don't have a whole lot else to share with you. But we will be having more of that next weekend, so can't wait.